Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, we're going to be covering 6 different Dexterity and Faith builds. I've been listening to a lot of feedback lately, and I've done 6 builds with the same identical stats, no need to respec. This is going to be a really good one with a lot of creative builds. We're going to be covering that crazy weapon that there's a lot of information about, so when we do get to that section later in the video, I'm going to explain how that weapon's Ash of War works. It's kind of crazy how it works. Now, for the rest of these builds, we've got some crazy Dexterity and Faith options for you. A lot of fun and powerful options, too, that mix a whole bunch of different things. And of course, we have a Paladin build coming up. We also have a build for the Fire Knight's Greatsword here that ended up being really powerful. There's a couple different things you could do with this amazing Greatsword that scales well with both Faith and Dexterity. So sit back, relax, get ready to watch some good builds, and then once you respec to these stats, you don't have to respec back. You've got a lot of variety here: fire damage, holy damage, lightning damage. This is my top 6 Dexterity and Faith builds. At number 6, we have the Paladin build. This one's actually higher on the list for me. I ranked them in terms of fun. I just wanted to put a really good one here at the start to kind of jump you into an awesome build, one of my favorite ones on this list, and then from there we'll go down from 5 to 1. Now for this, I'm going to show you the buffing order. We're using Golden Bough, we're using Blessings of the Erdtree because that's something a Paladin would use, and then I added in Halashabiri for damage. So I'm going to explain real quick why I changed up the typical Paladin build. Initially, with the same exact build, by the way, basically the same build. We're using multi-layered Rings of Light, by the way, and Golden Arcs, the latter of which is chargeable. I did use Sacred Blade on a straight sword and then a shield, but it's just kind of a boring playstyle for me, so I substituted it with a Barbed Staff Spear. But without literally changing anything, you could pick any good straight sword, put it in Sacred Affinity with Sacred Blade on it, and then go for the whole shield vibe, and then of course use the spells here like Multi-Layered Ring of Light and Golden Arcs for a lot of holy damage. But for me, the Barbed Staff Spear is just too good to pass up. It mixes in perfectly, gives us a ton of holy damage, a lot of damage that we're able to get on the Magma Worm there. We have the Barbed Staff Spear plus 10. We're using the Erdtree seal because it fits. You can check out our armor set there. And then we have the Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Godfrey Icon that will charge the Golden Arcs there. We have the Holy tier, of course, for the holy damage, and Faith tier to get to 60. Let's jump into stats. I'm only going to show stats briefly throughout the video for those that are using these timestamp because they're all the same. You don't have to respec. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 25 Endurance. We have 40 Dexterity. We have 60 Faith with the Faith tier. We're using Golden Vow, Halashabiri, Blessings of the Erdtree, Multi-Layered Ring of Light, and we're also using Golden Arcs. Alright, now that one would have been tied with 1 for me. We're going to rank down from here, but these are all fun. At number 5, we have a Night Lightning. This is going to be using the Claws of Night in combination with different lightning incantations. So the whole concept that we have going on for us here is to use the Ash of War and the Claws for quick successive attack and bleed build-up, sometimes even proccing Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and then use that generic damage to add on to our incantations, our lightning incantations for massive damage. And we do end up getting a bleed proc here. Now, I want to mention one thing real quick. As far as Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, how much fun are you having with the DLC? I'm still enjoying it like crazy. It's been amazing. I'm on my 3rd run through it currently. I'm actually doing a solo run, and it has been an absolute blast. I feel like the DLC is phenomenal. Yeah, it's really been an incredible journey so far. I feel like they did an amazing job, and they added on to the best game, in my opinion, ever. We got 4,200 damage there with the Lightning, and then we finished off Renala with Lightning Spear. This is a good combination build. We're going to jump into the build here shortly. For those curious, by the way, I am working on my top 10 overpowered builds. That should be up Sunday or Monday, the latest. It's taking me a little bit of time on that one. I'm trying to make sure everything is relatively optimized. Now we're going to jump into equipment. And we have the Claws of Night plus 10, a really fun weapon to use with a really cool ash. We're using Gravelstone Seal, we hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Ritual Swords Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, and then we have the Lightning tier and Faith tier as well. And once again, we'll go over stats briefly for those that are using this timestamped. Only about 10-15 seconds each time. 60 Vigor, 25 Endurance, 20 Mind. We have 40 Dexterity, and we have 60 Faith once we're using the Faith tier. Golden Vow is what we're using, Halashabiri to boost lightning damage, of course, and then we have Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, and we're using Lightning Spear 2 on this one. And the next one up, we have another Sacred type build. We are using the Crucible Wings here, and we came up with a decent build for good damage with it. We're using Milady, of course, or Milady, however you say it. We were using it in Sacred Affinity, and able to honestly get pretty good damage out of it using the Crucible Wings Ash of War. So another thing you can do if you want to lean more into dexterity is you can actually put it in keen affinity and then put electrify armament on it. I did that in a previous video. It's really cool, and you can get a lot of damage out of the weapon that way too with the scaling you can get, since we have 60 faith with the faith tier. By the way, whatever this incantation is, divine bird feathers, I have not been able to get good damage out of it yet. I'm not sure what the point of this incantation is. Maybe I need to test it more, I'm not sure, but again here we're using multi-layered Ring of Light. I was trying to put in Divine Bird Feathers there, but it's not particularly useful. And then of course we're going to be using mainly Milady with the Crucible Wings Ash of War, and it truly is a cool Ash of War to look at. You can get a lot of damage out of it too. It does good posture damage as well. Something interesting about this video I'm realizing too, as far as your incantations, going up to 80 faith is really helpful because it matters a lot. But as far as the Ashes of War go in the game and different affinities that you're going to use like Sacred and Flame Art, they tend to cap around 60 anyway. It's worth mentioning that I did this same build with 80 Faith and Sacred Affinity and using Crucible Wings, of course, and I was getting basically the same damage that I'm getting now. There really wasn't a major difference between the two. So at that point, in my opinion, you're better off going with Dexterity and Faith for versatility, or even Strength and Faith, which is great too. For this video, of course, though, we're running a Dexterity and Faith build. A lot you could do with that. I could even expand on this one even more, especially leaning more into Dex, because this one leans more towards Faith here. We have Milady, of course, in Sacred Affinity with Crucible Wings. Any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. We have the Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword Talisman, Melissen's Prosthesis, Sacred Scorpion Charm. We have the Holy tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats real quick again for those using this timestamped. And we have 60 Vigor here. We have 60 Faith with the Faith tier, as we mentioned. We're using Melissen's Prosthesis, so we hit that initial good soft cap of 45 Dexterity as well. So once again, we have that versatility there. There's a lot you could do with that. 25 Endurance, 20 Mind. And we're using Golden Vow, Hellish Brewery to buff our incantations, as well as our weapon damage too. And then we're using multi-layered Ring of Light, and Divine Bird Feathers isn't that great. At least so far anyway. At number 3, we have the Fire Knight God build, and this is amazing, honestly. There's a couple different new Ashes of War that you could use for this weapon, but overall it has fantastic scaling in Flame Art. It's also a bit of a dex weapon on the physical portion of the weapon, and then you get an A in Keen Affinity if you want to switch to Keen Affinity and try different things with that too with these same stats. Now for this we are using Flame Spear, and it is chargeable. This Ash of War is chargeable and can do a lot of damage and a lot of additional fire damage too. Yeah, don't forget to hold the button down on this one. And we're, of course, mixing in a couple of regular incantations like Black Flame and Flame of the Fell God, too, just to kind of add in there and continue to add up fire damage. But there's the charge right there. You could hold it down. You could actually see it visibly charge. And then, of course, you're going to get a lot of posture damage out of this one, too. Really cool weapon they added in the Fire Knight's Greatsword. It's becoming a favorite among the community, and for a good reason. It's an excellent weapon. It's kind of like a fire version of the Zweihander. You have pierce damage on it too. It's got a nice charge attack, and then of course different Ashes of War and everything that you want to use in Flame Art. It's particularly great in Flame Art. Let's jump into equipment on this one. And we have the Fire Knight's Flame Art Greatsword. We have Flame Spear. We have any seal we're using here, but we're supposed to be using the Godslayer seal there. We hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Arsenal Charm +1, Godfrey Icon, Fire Scorpion Charm, Flame tier, and Faith tier. Yeah, Giant Seal or Godslayer Seal would be best there. We have 60 Vigor, same stats here, 60 Faith with the Faith tier, 40 Dexterity. We have 16 Strength, which obviously in this case you're going to have to, I think you have to two-hand it, although that might be around the minimum requirements. We have 25 Endurance, 20 Mind. It actually takes more Dexterity to use than Strength, though. We are using Golden Vow, Hellish Brewery, Flame of the Fell God, and Black Flame. Alright, before we get to number 1, we now have the best one on this list for a pure split between Dexterity and Faith, and that is Messmer Spear, which is truly an incredible weapon. You can see the entire Ash of War there against the fairly resistant Draconic Tree Sentinel, did around 5,800 damage. Maybe it's just me, but I love this spear. I think this spear is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to show you a different way to build around it slightly in another clip against the dog in Rhea Lucaria. We'll explain that in a minute here, but we're going to go over equipment first for this one. The Ash of War on this is so cool to use, does a lot of fire and physical damage, and it can actually build up on successive hits too. Let's jump into equipment for this one. By the way, the helm also boosts his weapon art. I just hadn't gotten it prior to jumping into New Game Plus, so I can't grab his equipment now. We have Spear of the Imperial +10. We are using the Erdtree seal here. We'll explain that in a minute. You can check out the armor set. Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Melissen's Prosthesis, Flame tier, and Faith tier. So real quick, since we're going to go over the same stats where we have 60 Vigor, 60 Faith with the Faith tier, and 45 Dexterity with Melissa's Prosthesis, I want to mention, by the way, we're using Golden Vow, Halishapuri, and that's the Fire Serpent incantation, that the Fire Knight skill does not have the best scaling. 60 Faith is actually close with the Erdtree seal, even with the boost. At 80 Faith, you're probably better off using a host of different seals. Now, for a different setup here, we are going to be showing off the Fire Knight seal, as well as Messmer Spear again, and a little bit of a different build setting up around the charged spear attack as well. So you have a couple talismans that will boost this. You have the smithing talisman that will boost that charge throw, that's really cool, and then you have the axe talisman as well. You can also use the charge tier to boost the damage. We're throwing in Fire Serpent here at the end as well, but the main concept here is with the Charged Spear, you could boost that a little bit differently. Now, it's going to mainly do fire and physical damage, much like the Spear itself, and even if you boost it with the Smithing Talisman, Axe Talisman, and the Charged tier, it's going to cap around 800 damage or so. And by the way, once again, you can use Messmer's Helm to boost the damage on the Spear. The Fire Knight set can boost the incantations too. We have Spear of the Imperator plus 10. We have Fire Knight Seal plus 25. You can check out our armor set there. Shard of Alexander, Axe Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Melissa's Prosthesis, Flame tier, or the Charge tier if you're using the Spear throws, and Faith tier. Don't forget the Smithing Talisman will boost those throws too. At number 1, we have Euporia. This is a really interesting weapon with a lot of detail behind it. We're going to go into the detail on this one, exactly how it works, as it's a bit complex for a weapon. So this weapon took literally hours of testing for me, and it took a while to get used to it. I got better with it eventually. I'm going to show another clip, as practice does make perfect with this one. I'm going to explain here exactly how this weapon works. So the weapon art by itself is essentially spinning weapon version of holy damage on a twin blade. However, there's an extra bonus to this weapon. If you use the charged attacks for it, you can actually build up what is essentially a power up for the weapon art that makes it even more powerful. This is a bit hard to do because you have to make contact with 2 full charge hits essentially to get that power up, and I think a third one actually makes it more powerful. You're going to see it here in a second, and a little bit better in the second clip that I show. Now it adds holy damage too. I think it's a flat amount. It's not an incredible amount. It's nothing crazy. It might be like 50 or something. I'm not sure on the exact amount. I didn't look that up or anything, but as far as the weapon art itself, it's going to give you additional holy damage too, and then of course you get that cool beam once you have it charged up when you're using the charged attacks. The problem with it for me is that you have to get in basically at least 2 full charged attacks on a twin blade, which is basically multi-hits, and it's pretty difficult to do, and then you get that power up for around, like, I don't know, it might be like 15 seconds or so, and have to use it relatively fast, and you get an additional beam with the spinning weapon. And in the other clip, I'll show off the beam. It's part of the clip from the intro and exactly how that works, but it is a little bit difficult to use. We have Euporia, preferably plus 10. Any seal for buffs, we have 51 poise. I was using the Shard of Alexander, Melissa's Prosthesis, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Winged Sword Insignia, or Ritual Sword Talisman is actually really good to help with the beam damage, Holy tier, and Faith tier. And the same stats on this one. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 25 Endurance, 16 Strength, 45 Dexterity with Melissa's Prosthesis, and then we have 60 Faith with the Faith tier. And we're using Golden Vow and Halishapuri. I want to mention one thing with this weapon. It takes a little bit as far as practice goes until you're going to get this one down. You really got to get in those charge attacks. You got to build up that special weapon art, and then when you release the weapon art, it can do a lot of damage. It's really good once you have it. Yeah, I mean, it really does pay off with practice. You get it for 15 seconds once you have that buff, and then you could use it. You're going to see it here, and it does end up doing a lot of damage. Now, does the weapon still need a buff? Yeah, it probably still needs a buff, especially given the fact that it's holy damage. Yeah, it'd be the one downside I'd say for this weapon is that because it's holy damage, even with the beam, if you're going to take this one back to the base game, as far as the middle of the base game and onwards, especially the end game, this could be a very, very challenging weapon to use, simply for the fact that you're getting something that does a lot of holy damage, and then basically pure holy damage on the best part of the weapon art. And you're going to see the beam here, finally, what it's able to do. I mean, once you charge this up, it can be quite good. Right there, we got a quick 3,000 damage. It's going to be like a holy version, kind of the Sword of Night and Flame. Imagine the magic beam, but a holy version of that. Except with this weapon, for some reason, you have to earn it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. Everyone that's subbed to this point is much appreciated, by the way. It's been an incredible journey so far. Do not forget to sub for more Elden Ring content. And of course, we're going to be covering Shadow of the Erdtree builds like crazy. We're going to be doing some overpowered builds coming up soon, probably Sunday or Monday. Can't wait for that video. And then continue to do fun, creative, and unique stuff too. I really enjoy doing this list with the same stats. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.